September 12th, 2011, informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. Welcome to all of you that are watching us on Channel 16 and all of you that are here at Carnegie Town Hall. We'll start out with a City Council staff report by Deborah Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations.
Good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council, and today just a couple of updates for you. In the interest of providing better public access to public documents, the Clerk's Office and the IT Department are moving ahead with the document imaging program. This will be eventually citywide, but at this point in time it will encompass the City Clerk's Office. We'll begin meetings in October and have begun purchasing some of the equipment to help us image those documents and make those available to the public. And are excited about this process and providing that more government transparency. In addition, ballots are real close to being printed. We're working on some test ballots to make sure that the ballots will read properly in the optical scanners on election night. Pretty important detail to make sure tie up. But absentee voting will begin on September 27th at 8 a.m. at the Minnehaha County Courthouse. And we look forward to providing sample ballots to the voters so they can look at those ballots ahead of time and be prepared to vote when they enter the polls or when they enter Minnehaha County Courthouse to absentee vote. In addition, there is the Districting Commission will have their public hearings this week. As you walked in through the multi-purpose room, you may have seen those large maps. In addition, there is the criteria that is set forth by City Charter that the Commission worked with to determine those maps that would equally apportion the voters in the City of Sioux Falls after the census was performed. Their hearings will be Wednesday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at night, and then on Saturday morning from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. It will be at the Carnegie Town Hall, and we look forward to hearing from any of you who'd like to attend. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Owen? Councilor Erpenbach.
Could you clarify the dates on the hearings? I think is it Thursday or is it Wednesday?
Oh, yes, you are correct.
Okay,
it is
thank you.
Thursday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at night, and then Saturday morning from 10 to 11:30 at Carnegie Town Hall.
Good, thank you. And then my other question is, because I haven't looked online, but I assume those maps are also available at siouxfalls.org, is that correct?
Yes, they are. There is on the clerk's website. You can find information about that. And the clerk's office did mail voter registration cards to everybody who was being affected in those districts, about 4,600 voters, to let them know about those hearings so they can come and attend. So,
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Ms. Owen? If not, Councilor Brown, Fiscal Committee report.
We met last week and discussed the potential of water sewer rate freezes for elderly or low income. We also talked about rate structures, how often we should look at raising those. The committee opted to do nothing with those at this point, maybe revisit those in the future, so those will not be coming to the full council. Other issues we dealt with, we heard an update on the software package that finance is working with, and we also heard from internal audit, and I see Rich here, and it escapes me right now. Rich, can you help me?
Rich Oaksel, internal audit. We're starting preliminary work on a fraud policy that apply to all city employees.
Thank you, Rich. So they were all informational points, no action on last Monday.
Any questions for Councilor Brown? If not, we'll go into council open discussion, and we'll start out with a preview of today's Public Service Committee meeting by Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Today at Public Services Committee, we will be getting an update on the recodification project that is being run by Deborah Owen and our city clerks. Second item on the agenda is a wildlife management plan, and that will be discussing the expansion or the deer program for this year. The last thing on our agenda is the proposed revisions to Chapter 18, and that is more recycling and environmental changes for the city.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilor Anderson, Jr.? If not, other council open discussion items? There being none, We'll go on to presentations. We have an event center update, and I understand that Director Turback is starting us out this afternoon.
Good afternoon, council members. Tracy Turback with the Finance Office. In this month's Event Center progress update, I'll be giving an update on the financing plan. We'll also talk a little bit about the public information efforts that are underway, including the information that we're providing as we give these presentations, and some feedback on questions that we're hearing from the public about the project. Mike Cooper is also going to provide an update on the trolley pilot project, and you'll also hear an update on the project timeline as well. Since first presenting the council with the Event Center financing plan, there have been a couple of key changes, and I thought it was appropriate with those in mind to provide an update to the council on how those key changes have affected the plan to finance the Event Center. First of all, the cap on the project costs has been established at $115 million, as you folks know. In addition, the interest rates that were used to develop the original financing plan are now several months old, and so it was appropriate to freshen those up and rerun the numbers again using current interest rates. So we asked PFM, which is the firm that's providing our financial advisory services, to take those changes into account using the $115 million project amount, as well as current interest rates, and rerun the projected debt service payments for the project. Essentially, we asked PFM that if we were to issue bonds under today's interest rates, what would our debt service payments be? And their analysis indicates with that $115 million project cost, based on current interest rates, those interest rates would come in at under 4%. So things have continued to improve. You might recall that previous projections, we've been using 4 to 4.5%. We're down now in that 3.5 to 4% range, and that is may not sound like a lot, but it is very, very significant in a project of this size, and of course over time that has a significant impact on the interest costs. And one of the things that does those lower interest rates has an effect of improving our financing plan by eliminating the need to have interest-only payments in those first 2 years. So we're able to take advantage of lower interest costs in those first couple of years and use those dollars instead toward making principal payments. In fact, during the first 5 years, the 12 through 16, which is what our 5-year plan would cover, those first 5 years at the current interest rate amount or interest rate level, we would actually have $4.4 million more going toward principal and that much less going toward interest costs. So that relatively small change in interest rates has had a significant impact on the overall financing picture. The principal payments, of course, by eliminating those interest-only payments, would begin next year, which is 2012. The plan to pay off the bonds entirely within 22 years would not need to change. Again, even with the higher project cost amount, with the lower interest rates, we're able to stay at that 22-year payoff on the last bonds. Another key point, the benefit of lower interest rates, is that those, if you recall, the payments were structured so that they would step up incrementally over the first 5 years, and then in year 6 through year 22 they would remain flat. And initially the plan had those 17 years of payments at $9.5 million. Based on the current interest rates, those would come down by $500,000 a year to about $9 million. So that's translates to significant interest savings. In fact, the projected debt service today, using today's interest rates, over the life of the bonds, is $13 million less than what we were projecting earlier this year when we first presented you with the financing plan. And all of these things, of course, are achievable with the assumption of a $115 million project. So in spite of the fact that the cap on the project costs was raised, the actual costs over the life of the project have declined. Using those new numbers then that PFM provided, we've updated the 25-year forward-looking graphic to show the relative share of second penny revenues that would be available for other capital projects, for street projects, park projects, and other types of projects. This graphic is a 25-year projection of revenues derived from the second penny sales tax. And you can see in 2011, we're anticipating to collect about $45 million in second penny revenues. And this graphic, again, assumes 3% growth in those revenues for the next 25 years. And so you can see that by the 25th year, 2036, with that 3% growth assumption, we would actually be at about $95 million annually in our second penny revenues. And of course, those dollars are restricted to capital type of projects. So initially for the analysis, all those dollars are available for capital projects. We currently use a portion of those second penny dollars to make payments on previously issued bonds. Those dollars are represented now on the chart in the light blue color. So those are the dollars that we are currently committing and will commit in the future years to making payments on existing bonds that have previously been issued for other projects. The remaining orange portion, of course, represent dollars that are available for capital projects or bond payments on other projects. Now, if we overlay the bond payments based on the new data from PFM for the event center bonds, those are represented in the dark blue. You can see what that does to our graphic. And again, the remaining orange portion of each bar would be those dollars each year that would be projected to be available for other capital projects, like streets and parks and libraries and so forth. It's important to keep in mind that for this graphic, again, we've assumed 3% annual growth in those second penny revenues. And I know that some have questioned that maybe 3% is being overly optimistic. So I guess in response to that, and you've seen this before, this is looking back 25 years to when the second penny sales tax was first implemented. Back in the mid-'80s, the second penny was put into effect, and in 1985, I believe that was the first full year of collection, the city collected $8.4 million, and in 2010 collected $44.1 million. So it's been a steady climb. In terms of percentage growth rates, that represents about 6.9% annual growth in that source of revenue. And I think this historical data should help put into perspective the 3% growth assumption going forward that was depicted on the previous slide. A few words about the public information presentations that are currently underway. The city team has a number of these scheduled. There are currently about 50 presentations that have been scheduled to be given. I think about a dozen or so have already been delivered. We're getting good feedback, some good questions. We've got about 300 different service clubs, civic groups, employers, coffee groups, church groups, you name it. We're trying to get the word out wherever we can. We've contacted about 300, and we've got a goal of actually delivering about 200 presentations over the next couple of months. I should point out that there will be presentations offered, of course, to the general public. If someone doesn't happen to be a member of a service club or civic organization, they will also have an opportunity to see one of these presentations at one of our local libraries or community centers, and those will be scheduled in the days to come. So we are working hard, trying to get the word out, get the information out. Those presentations include information about the facility itself. So we're talking about the building, the work that's been done by the architect to this point. And the presentations also include information on the financing, which you folks have seen. We also talk about the private dollars that have been projected, that are anticipated, the economic effects of the project, as well as the election timeline and the ballot language is all incorporated into that presentation. Now, we are obviously getting some feedback and questions. There have been a number of questions that we might put into kind of the frequently occurring category, and so we want to address some of those today. Some of the more frequent questions we're hearing has to do with the timing of the project, whether or not the timing is right, and I think for the most part that relates to the financing and issuing of bonds for the project. Additionally, we're hearing questions, as you folks have asked previously, how will this project impact the city's ability to follow through on street and park improvements and other types of projects? What kind of jobs will be created? How can we be certain that the costs won't exceed the $115 million cap? And questions about what the economic benefit is or what the return on our investment is. So I'll tackle the first couple of questions there, and then I'll turn it over to Mark Cotter to handle a couple, and then Mike Cooper will take over from there. In terms of the timing of the project and whether or not the timing is appropriate, I had PFM prepare a graphic, a historical graphic of interest rates. This graphic happens to reflect rates on AAA rated 20-year municipal bonds over the past 30 years. Now, of course, the city's bonds are not rated AAA. They are AA2, so the interest rates that the city might get would be slightly higher than this, but this does give you a pretty good historical perspective and shows where the trends are and kind of where we are in the long-term history of municipal bond rates. And I think this is a fair interpretation of this graphic. In my view, would be to conclude that there have not been more favorable interest rates for municipal bonds in the past 30 years. I just think that's jumps right out at you when you look at this graphic. And I don't think, I know that no one can say with any kind of certainty just how long rates will stay this low. Clearly, from a historical perspective, there's more room for those rates to move up than there is to move down. However, I know from a national perspective, the Federal Reserve has indicated that their goal, at least in terms of short-term rates, are to hold rates low as they are currently, at least into 2013. So the low rates are certainly very favorable right now. If low interest rates are important to the city, and I certainly believe that they are, now is absolutely an excellent time to be issuing bonds. Second question, again, has to do with something that we've talked about before, and that is how will the Event Center project impact street and park improvements. And you've seen this graphic before. This graphic depicts the 5-year capital plan that you folks will be considering later tonight, and indicates that the 5-year plan that you'll be considering tonight, in comparison with the 5-year plan that was approved last year, does in fact invest almost $10 million more in street projects, in park projects, and other city projects than what was contemplated in the 5-year plan a year ago. Specifically, streets and highways, the change from a year ago was from $121.8 million to the proposed 5-year plan of $128.1 million. That's $6.3 million more, or slightly more than a 5% increase from just a year ago. And the similar fact is true about the park facility improvements and other city facility improvements as well. And it's key, and we're reassuring folks as part of the presentations that there are no projects that were removed from the capital plan to make room for the Event Center project. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark to address the next couple of questions that we are hearing from the public.
Good afternoon, Council Chair and Councilors. Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. Third question that we've heard as we've gone out is what kinds of construction jobs will be created through this process? And we've reached out to Mortensen Construction since they have such a sound track record of managing these projects. We've asked them to break down our project by discipline, and they went through a detailed breakdown from laborers to carpenters, masons, equipment operators, iron workers. They're the people that tie the rebar but also put up the roof truss systems, as well as the framing that goes around the window areas. The glazers, those are the interior and exterior window people. Roofers, painters, elevator workers, pipe fitters. Pipe fitters do a lot of work in the mechanical areas. They would also do all the pipe fitting that would go under an ice floor, any gas systems that come into the facility. Sheet metal workers, all the HVAC, those types of activities, plumbers, sprinkler fitters, and electricians. And so they break them down. The total, in their estimate for a project of this size, there would be, throughout the course of the project, 1,100 tradespeople will touch this project. And there will be certain disciplines that are on there nearly full-time. For example, once the project starts, there has to be coordination from the beginning to the end with an electrician, from getting the initial services in to running conduits to all the way to the end of actually putting on the finished light switch panels. And so there are certain disciplines that will be on the project consistently throughout the entire job. There will also be people that only come in for a short segment. But for the type of project that the City of Sioux Falls is contemplating, 1,100 jobs over the course of the project. There's a couple photos. These are also photos that we asked from Mortensen on similar projects of large concrete pours, as foundation and wall systems being poured. The picture on the right is interior framing, and the picture the picture on the left is interior framing, and the picture on the right shows concrete work happening in the background, but also close is some of that mechanical pipe fitting work that's taken place. Next slide. Fourth question that we've seen is, how are we assured that the cost won't exceed $115 million? And this is exactly the reason why we sourced the construction manager at risk portion. We wanted a construction manager that's done this work to work hand in hand, parallel with the architect, so we have cost certainty on what these improvements cost. We also contractually have this tied into the construction manager at risk contract, and then thirdly, it is the ceiling that is established by the public vote. The way we've reached at that is to make sure that we have good local market-specific pricing, is that Mortensen did send out 300 letters to local contractors. Mortensen's approach is essentially to take the schematic design drawings from the architect. They do a complete takeoff from foundation systems to number of seats, and then they source all those respective disciplines for pricing on those takeoffs. They combine it, and that was the presentation that we provided that established the $115 million. And so it's not only track record, but it's also local specific pricing to Sioux Falls. And then last, one of the key reasons that Mortensen was selected based on their proposal is they had very good cost control on a number of projects, and that was important to us. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Mike Cooper, and he'll address question 5.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Cooper with Planning and Building Services. One of the other top questions that we've been asked during these presentations is just a little more explanation about the return on the investment. In the PowerPoint that we've been using, we've referred to the AECOM report that did our economic analysis for us. And we talked about that the new projected annual economic impact to Sioux Falls will be $36 million, and that's based on the third year of operation, as we've presented to you before. And there are 3 main categories of where this economic impact is going to be generated. The first is by spending of people that go to events within the event center, whether it's ticket sales or concession sales. And that's going to be about $9.6 million of the total. The second category would be spending throughout the community if people come here for an event that are from outside of Sioux Falls, or even Sioux Falls residents that might do something before or after an event throughout the community. And that could be everything from transportation to eating, shopping, other types of entertainment, or lodging. And that total category is projected to be about $13.8 million of economic spending throughout the community. The third category that AECom identified was spending on goods and services from vendors and suppliers that would be utilized as part of the event center, and that's projected to be about $12.8 million. And what we've said too is that this $36 million is essentially equal to the current annual economic impact of the convention center and the arena. Along with that, as Mark went through with you, information about construction jobs, we do hear a lot of people interested in what the employment impact is going to be from the event center. And again, with the AECom report, we've said that the projections for new permanent jobs created showed 184. And that includes a combination of support staff that would be added for the event center. That would include lodging, employment, food and beverage, retail, entertainment, and transportation. So again, when we see spending throughout the community, we know that a lot of businesses besides the event center could potentially be impacted not only with sales tax revenue, sales, but also with additional employment opportunities. And the AECom report also said that with the employment, we would see a total annual earnings of about $5 million. One of the other areas that I was going to touch on today that we seem to be getting a lot of interest in is this trolley shuttle service that we talked about. We have been working with Global Spectrum, with downtown Sioux Falls, and with the CVB on a pilot partnership to kind of test this idea of having a trolley shuttle available initially for downtown. And so far we've identified 3 conventions that have been scheduled. The first one was a Kiwanis convention, and there we used the shuttle service to go downtown. We got some real positive feedback from the availability of that. Over 20 people use the service, so it's not a huge number, but it's the beginning of an idea that when people are looking for places to go, they would like to have some kind of a transportation system available. Also, we had the South Dakota Trucking recently that used the service. We don't have all the numbers back from that, but they, in some cases, brought their own transportation, and we heard that a lot of them would rather have gone to play golf than go downtown or to go shopping. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. The next big one that's going to be coming up in October that we're going to test this, that we think we're going to get a real large response to, is the Red Hatter Society. So they'll be coming in October, and again, we'll have that shuttle service available for them to go into the downtown area, which would include places like the Pavilion, as well as the Falls Park Visitor Center, and the Sculpture Walk is another event that we know people want to come and see. We want to expand this also eventually to the Empire Mall area so that it's not just going to be a downtown shuttle. But the initial response and interest in this, as we've talked about it, has been very, very positive. So finally, to wrap up today the presentation, we want to turn it over to Mayor Huther to again talk to you about the project timeline. Mayor?
The lowest borrowing rates in the last 30 years. We'll be able to continue to address the other infrastructure needs of our city, even if we build a new event center. Jobs, jobs, and jobs. Something that I know has been important to this city council, certainly important to this city. We had it outlined today, over 1,100 construction jobs alone will be created as we build this new event center, along with up to 200 more at a time when certainly Sioux Falls would love to have more jobs, jobs, and jobs. We're using a prudent approach to help manage the expenses of this project. You know, we tried to outline to the people of Sioux Falls this construction manager at risk proposal and why it was the right way to tackle a project like this. $115 million is nothing to sneeze at.
And I know that there was concern in prior projects in this city, and there's still concern today, that, Mayor, you know what, team, how do you know you're not going to go above that $115 million? This construction manager at risk approach will ensure that we don't. $36 million in positive economic impact to this city, projected by year 3. And the impact will happen all over town. It won't just happen at the arena. It won't just happen at the Sioux Empire Mall. It won't just happen in downtown Sioux Falls. It'll happen throughout this city. The council has made it very, very clear from the beginning, and I commend them for that they wanted the people to ultimately be the deciding factor when it comes to this investment. The council has worked diligently to try to get the word out on those tough issues, those tough questions. They have challenged the administration and the team, along with the experts that we've hired, to try to get that word out. We're not done, but we're certainly getting closer. As you've heard on the media so many times before, Sioux Falls, we've never been this far before when it comes to this project. Well, the council wanted the City of Sioux Falls to make this decision, and now we are reaching out to the City of Sioux Falls. Folks, it's your decision to make. On November 8th of this year, you will have the opportunity to simply vote yes or to vote no on this project that we've been talking about for well over 10, 12, 13 years. If you want to vote and you're not registered, you still have time to register to vote. We've got young families with children all over town, on the west side, on the east side, on the north side, the south side, that love this city dearly. Love it dearly. They want to make sure that we're doing the things that they care about, but yet they're not registered to vote. You have an opportunity to vote on this, Sioux Falls, and so much more, including your next mayor, your next city councilor, and you can register to vote through October 24th of this year. And kind of the fun stuff is that, folks, pretty soon you'll already be able to vote. You don't have to wait until November 8th of this year to vote. You can do it as early as September 27th. We don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. We don't. It's not fair, and it's not prudent, and it's not responsible. But you know what? At the same time, the people of Sioux Falls do need to understand that if we do vote yes as a city, and we decide to vote on a new event center for this great town, that we will actually begin construction. We will be creating those jobs, and jobs as early as August of 2012, less than a year from today. And then if things go right, or if things go as we believe that they will, according to those experts, we will have a new event center in our town by the fall of 2014. We talked about this education program, and I will let the people of Sioux Falls know it's not just the mayor, it's not just the team of individuals that have come up that are out there engaging the public. It's your city council as well. They also have that same presentation that has been approved by our legal team, and they also will be out there trying to address the issues and trying to answer those questions that you may have. If you would like us to set up a presentation, please do so. Contact 367-8802, or you can email us at the address there, vscoya@siouxfalls.org. Tracy said it best. It's for businesses, it's for organizations, it's for coffee groups, it's for church groups. We don't care. If you want to know more about this event center topic before you vote, let us know. Let us know. City Council, again, thank you for this opportunity. Sioux Falls, thank you for this opportunity. Councilor Chair Aguilar, are there any questions that you folks may have?
Questions for the mayor or for Directors Turbeck, Cotter, or Cooper? Councilor Jameson.
Excuse me, Mayor or Tracy, I'm not sure, whoever you'd like, Mayor. A couple of questions. The principal payments that start in 2012, how much of that payment that would actually be principal?
going to have to shoot from the hip because I don't have my projected debt service schedule, but I believe the 2012 principal amount was slightly over $1 million.
That's a lot better than just interest only. I appreciate that. I think that's a great idea.
And if I can just kind of to finish out that thought, the
Sure.
first 5 years, and the principal amount in each of those first 5 years was increased to take advantage of those lower interest costs. And the 5 years combined, like I say, would be about $4.4 million more in principal. And that really does help us drive down that borrowing cost over the long term by paying those bonds off early.
So then in the end, with the lower interest rate, what does the total interest payment or the total cost of the project turn out to be?
The total interest, again, I don't recall the exact figures. I know there was a difference from the current interest rates and the projections of about $13 million over the previous one, so it's come down $13 million, somewhere in the neighborhood of, I want to say, $58 million total.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Karski.
I guess my question would be also for Director Turbach. The way I understand it, and you've been over this, so forgive me if I'm asking you to rehash it, but of the $115 million, basically about $9 million is sitting in an escrow account. Is that a correct assumption?
No, the $115 million is the amount that we would anticipate having available to spend on project costs for design and construction.
Now, you had said before that we're going to have money sitting, or the last payment basically sits in a savings account.
That's correct.
Where does that last payment come from, that last $9 million?
The actual amount of bonds issued would be more than $115 million, and that's where that service reserve fund would come from. It's added on top of the amount of money that you need to finance the project.
Okay.
So that money is borrowed, put into a trust account, sits there for 22 years, and then is used to make the final payment.
I mean, if you put $9 million into a trust account, even at a simple interest rate of 3%, using the old rule of 72, you'd have about $17.5, $18 million by the time 20 years would go by. So would that shorten the payment on the bond note then?
The interest earnings on that debt service reserve fund would be used throughout the life of the bonds to make those interest payments and principal payments. So as that interest is earned, it will be used to lower the amount of second penny dollars that we've got to use to make our payments.
Okay.
So it's not accumulating, it's going to be used on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Brown.
If you will. One of the frequently asked questions that I've had recently, is in fact as late as Friday, what has changed from city staff presenting something like this that's on an election ballot? The rec center, Drake Springs, park staff was not allowed under those proposals to go out and speak to groups. So I'm wondering what has changed in this proposal.
Well, and again, I'm not the legal expert. Dave Fifley is. And David, if you can help at some point in time, but why don't I try at least initially? In working with City Attorney Dave Fifley, he has stated that when we go out there, we are to present the information that is in as factual way as in an informational way as we can. The 20-minute presentation that has been developed was scrutinized in a major way by the city attorney as well as others to try to make it just that. When I don't know what was decided during those other votes or those other ballot initiatives, but again, I think that probably the main thing is to try to get the information out there as much as we can. One of the things that's very, very intriguing that we found is that as we are on this traveling roadshow trying to educate the public, there is still a large percentage of the public that really doesn't know all the aspects of this topic. We've got folks that ask us how big it's going to be. We have folks that ask us where it's going to be. We have folks that ask us all kinds of things that, as you know, as a team, we've been talking about, and yes, battling in some cases. It seems like forever. But there's still an obvious need to know. And so, David, if you could maybe assist me in terms of answering that for Councilor Brown in terms of maybe what has changed. With your permission, Councilor Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Council Chair. Councilor Brown, there was a 1988 Attorney General opinion that talked about the ability of municipalities to essentially educate the public but not cross the line into advocacy. Unfortunately, there is no bright line test. I have, thanks to the mayor and the administration team, I've been allowed to scrutinize the presentation to try and scrub out any possibility for advocacy and keeping it more towards information or educational only. Certainly, under the law, we are allowed to educate the public, answer questions, source information from reports, etc. And as far as elected officials go, or other, say, city directors and so forth, they are certainly allowed to express their own personal opinions, and they have the freedom of speech, and they're certainly allowed to express those opinions. But again, it just goes to that educational part of the presentation that is certainly allowed under the law.
Very good. Thank you.
Other questions? I have a few. Director Turbach, in one of your initial slides on the second penny sales tax, showing what our current debt is and what the event center debt will be, do we have any current bonds that would be available, or that it would be beneficial to refinance, as we did approve doing, I think, back in 2010?
We currently do not have any that would be eligible to be refinanced, but that is something that, as those milestones are met, that's something that finance would certainly be evaluating. Typically, and it's very, very common when you issue sales tax bonds for a city to have to wait half of the term in order to call them. Anytime very far before that, it just typically does not work out to be financially feasible.
Thank you. My next questions are for Director Cooper. Can you give us some cost estimates for running the trolley between downtown and the event center?
I'm going to deflect this answer to Craig Palmericky, who is here today representing Global Spectrum. The pilot project that we're doing now is a three-way cost share between downtown Sioux Falls, Global Spectrum, and the CVB. And I'll let him address the financing of that.
That's okay. Craig Palmericky with Global Spectrum. It is, from what I understand, it's $70 an hour, and it's split between the three entities. So we're paying a third, CVB a third, and the downtown Sioux Falls a third.
So in the contract with the individuals that are here for the event, then do we specify the number of trips that will be made, or the number of hours that it will be available? How does that work?
What we do is we work with them on their agenda, because there's holes in their agenda that allows them to have some open time to be able to go and do these events. It just really depends on the group. So what we'll do is we'll say, when we're planning their event with them, we'll ask them to look at their agenda, see if there's anything inside that agenda that we can help them fill some holes for activities, whether they be a trolley or golf or downtown shopping or whatever we can do to help them, and then try to match it up if this works for them. In the case of these three events, it has worked for them, that it does fit within that schedule. So it just really depends on when their open times are. I know that with the Kiwanis group, they had, I think, about a 4-hour window that was an open time, so we were able to match it up. And so we just call the trolley service and say, okay, here's what I've got. They've committed to 20 people, 30 people. These are the hours that they'd like to go. Can we work this out? And it's a case-by-case basis, really.
So will there be more than ever one trolley used at a time, or?
From what I understand, there's 2 actual trolleys, but we don't actually tell the clients that it's a trolley, it's a shuttle service.
Okay.
That way it gives the transportation folks the opportunity to, if let's just say we have 150 people that want to go downtown for a couple of hours, let's figure out a way to make it happen for them. And in that case, you probably don't have, you're going to have more than just the 2 trolleys to make that work.
Okay. Thank you.
So hopefully that answered.
Any other questions? Councilor Jameson.
Mayor or staff, whoever, I appreciate you covering the questions that you're asked during some of your meetings. The question that I keep getting asked is, how is it that we can build a new event center or at least started in the first 5 years and have no effect on the CIP. And I know we went back, we're comparing to a year when our budget was flat. But, I mean, what happens in year 6? Tell us more about how that, how you see that working.
And Tracy, if I say anything incorrectly, just run on up here as fast as you can. The greatest factor in terms of how we're able to not only invest in a new event center for our town, but also meet the infrastructure needs of our town is based on the increased sales tax revenues that we are projecting in this town. We used some very, very conservative numbers when it came to the budgeting for the 2012 through 2017 CIP and operating budget, but that's the key, is that we are projecting to have sales tax revenue growth, and that allows us to not only absorb the increased expenses from these bond payments, but also absorb the expenses of keeping up with the infrastructure. And again, I still want to be conservative, but again, the numbers that we used, as shown by Tracy Turbach, we're using a 3% number, and I think the number that Tracy presented is that our average has been well over 6 in the past. So we actually believe that we'll be able even to do more, but we thought we'd try to be as prudent and as conservative as possible. Again, especially in this time, it's certainly an uncertain time. So that's how it works, Councilor Jameson, and that's how you're able to do both. Director Turbach, did that make sense? Very good. I should ask you, Councilor Jameson, did that make sense?
It does. Maybe the element that's missing for me is that as that CIP dollar amount increases because of the sales tax increasing year after year,
yes,
that allows us to take care of some long-term growth development for our city. In fact, if you look at our 2035 plan, there's like 4 new libraries or 7 new fire stations, and continuously we have to keep ramping up for that day when that day comes. And I'm just a little concerned that, more than a little concerned, that allocating roughly $10 million a year for some 20 years is going to take a chunk out of our ability to continue to grow our city.
And Councilor Jameson, let me take that concern and maybe turn it into a positive, and make you maybe even feel more confident. One of the challenges that we face in the city of Sioux Falls, as well as in the state of South Dakota, is that we basically fund our government in really one of 2 ways. One is through property taxes. The other one is through sales tax revenues. That's about it. There's some other ways, but they're minuscule at best. If we are going to keep up with the growing infrastructure needs of our town, the growing operational needs of our town, we're going to have to keep those revenues flowing in as well. That's the key. And I think that's one of the challenges that actually the Minnehaha County is facing right now, is that some of those revenues that they were banking on are not coming in. In our city, we believe that we should bank on those sales tax revenues and not rely on just the sources that we have today, but also invest in things like a brand new event center that will make a $36 million economic impact and more, so that we can drive in even more sales tax revenues, so that we can not only invest in the infrastructure that we have today, but the infrastructure needs that we have in the future. And let me just make one last point, and I see that the Argus Leader and certainly the other media outlets are here as well. And we've got people all over the state, including Minnesota and Iowa, that are watching this program and that will read the Argus Leader. I am going to say something with all honesty. 6 out of 10 people that will utilize the new event center will be from out of town. And if we can get those out-of-towners to help pay for our tax burden in the city of Sioux Falls, so be it. I look forward to that day.
Counselor?
On the same chart that's up here, the second penny sales tax, it shows the debt service for existing debt, the estimated event center bond payments. What's missing from this great long projection is any other borrowing that we would surely more than likely incur, let alone 41st Street, Minnesota Avenue, that sooner or later are going to have to be replaced, and other things that we'll need and want in our community. But have you thought of, or have you worked out any projections about how those might?
Councilor Jameson, that's very, very fair. And I think that probably what we could do, it's an excellent question, and you hit it right on the head, is we should probably, as a team, Tracy and Mark and the council, we should probably, as a team, try to estimate what those CIP projections will be in 2036. So, Councilor Jameson, we still have some work to do. It's a great question. I mean, Tracy, could you answer? How did you? Any thoughts on that today?
Mayor, maybe
sorry.
the idea is just to review the last 25 years to kind of see what our debt load has been
as a percentage of the overall budget.
Something you could use and just lay it in there to just to give us a better feel for
I think
what's
it's very fair.
Yeah. Okay.
Very fair. Good job.
Other questions? If not, thank you, Mayor, directors. Is there any other business to be brought before this body? If not, this meeting is adjourned.